Hi, it's Jay from The New Modern, and in this episode I'm speaking with Claudia Laroye. And Claudia is a driven, ambitious, talented, well-respected, well-spoken, creative, and just all-around fantastic human being who happens to be a world-class travel writer as well. Claudia has done a full rebrand, and that's tough enough as it is, but in the middle of a global pandemic, well, there's its own set of challenges and obstacles that are presented. The short version is Claudia started off over here as the traveling mom. Now she's over here as Claudia Travels. And there'll still be a little bit of crossover, but I'm gonna let Claudia tell her own story as far as timing and reasoning and fears and concerns and how she's made it a success. If at the end of the episode you like what you see, feel free to subscribe to the New Modern social outlets. And please take a look at Claudia's new outlet herself, Claudia Travels, and all of her links will be in the description below.
Hi, this is Claudia Laroye coming at you from Vancouver at the request of Jay, publisher of The New Modern. Thanks so much for having me here, Jay, to answer some questions about my recent rebranding process. I was the publisher of thetravelingmom.ca, and just last month I rebranded as claudiatravels.com. This process was probably 2 years in the making. I've been thinking about doing it for an awfully long time. I even created a second site because I wasn't sure if I was ready to take the plunge and finally become, the person that I actually am. And so I had two sites that were dual identities for who I represented as a brand. And then a couple of months ago, I decided that it was time. It was time to make the change. Even with the pandemic, of course, I'm not traveling as much as I used to, but I do travel. I am a mom and I always will be. However, now that my kids are older, I don't really identify in that space particularly well anymore. And I was getting typecast, I felt, as only such a thing. And I didn't want to be any longer. And so with the rebranding into claudiatravels.com, it has allowed me to escape from my castle prison of thetravelingmom.ca and open up an entirely new writing professional, aspect that allows me to write about anything under the sun, not limited to family or family travel, but rather I can touch upon subjects like history, culinary writing, adventure, sustainability, luxury subjects, all different kinds of things that I'm personally interested and would love to share with audiences. So I think it has allowed me to broaden my scope as a writer and also as an individual brand. Jay convinced me to do this video and I'm still such a noob at it, so you have to forgive me if all the angles are constantly changing. But in any case, one of the questions I had to answer was what might the consequences be of this rebranding change? And when I did the soft launch about the change, the overwhelming response was positive and supportive, that it represented who I am today and the type of work that I'm doing. So that was really heartening to hear from my audience and from colleagues as well. So I really appreciated that feedback and that support. In terms of consequences, some of them come really on the technical side in terms of redirecting articles from my old website to the new site, which is technical SEO related things that may or may not affect my domain authority to some degree. But even if it does in the temporary time frame, I think that I'll be able to overcome that over time, because now moving forward, this is going to be the space that I'm going to be in for the foreseeable future. I don't plan on any other massive rebranding changes, so I think that should work out over time. So that's really the only consequence that I can anticipate right now. The biggest challenge in rebranding has been my comfort level in taking the plunge and actually doing it. It probably took me about 2 years to really recognize the need to do it. And I actually did create the two sites. I still had thetravelingmom.ca and I created claudiatravels.com to house some of the other types of writing that I was doing. And then in January of this year, I realized that this was just silly. I needed to determine my way forward. I had to take the plunge and I consolidated everything and redirected everything to the new site, which was already created, claudiatravels.com. I had already done that work, so that redirection part actually took less than a day because I had already figured out the branding, the aesthetic, the colors, the font choices, all of the little details that I really actually enjoyed doing. And so when it actually took the time to put everything together and redirect things, it actually did not take a great deal of time to make that final change, which was really heartening. So in a nutshell, I guess the lessons learned are trust your gut. If you think it's probably the way forward, it's probably the way forward. In retrospect, I think I probably should have done this a year ago. But of course, a year ago, the pandemic was pretty much just unleashing itself upon us all. And we were all in such a state of shock. I don't know, and I don't believe that I was in the proper mindset to even anticipate that. I was still writing, I was still creating content for my previous site and also for freelance work. So I was still maintaining a level of professional work that I am really grateful for. But at that time, it did not feel right to do the rebrand because everything was in such flux. That was not the priority. Moving forward, it became a priority, and fortunately, all the pieces were in place for me to be able to make that change, and I'm really grateful for that, and I'm really grateful that I did it, finally. So thank you again to Jay and to the New Modern for this opportunity to share my rebranding story. I appreciate the time and thank you for any interest that you may have. And of course, I've mentioned it enough, but if you want to check it out, it is claudiatravels.com. Thank you so much for your support, and any feedback is welcome. Take care.